Welcome to the Red Dad Podcast,
where we'll be exploring the trials and triumphs of being a father, men's mental health,
and any other topic that inspires us to be rad.
Through a series of interviews, your host, Jace Kelly, will be discussing and discovering the best ways to become a rad dad. Now your host, Jace.
All right, welcome to episode 4 of the Rad Dad Podcast. I have my good friend Ken Caldwell on. He was also my youth leader growing up at a critical time in my life, so super excited to have him on. We planned this maybe a week ago, so glad to have you on. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for inviting me.
I guess to start off, I've never really asked you this question, but I just want to get kind of your background on where you grew up, what it was like growing up, you know, what your childhood was like, and
okay,
give me that breakdown real quick.
So I lived my whole life in Utah. I grew up in Highland City, up by the point of the mountain.
Okay.
We moved there when I was 3, and so Highland has changed a lot since then. When we moved there, it was really rural, a lot of open fields, a lot of farmers, and just good, hardworking people. Now it's a really wealthy area, right? But back then it really wasn't. It just really good, down-to-earth people. Not that there still aren't, but so just kind of grew up in rural Utah. Had 5 siblings, so I was number 5 of 6, 3 boys, 3 girls, and just had a great family growing up. I couldn't have asked for better parents and better siblings. Just an ideal growing up, really. Yeah.
So when you were growing up, did you ever think about, like, I guess like in high school or, you know, pre-mission, did you ever think like, I'm probably going to live in Utah my whole life, or did you have thoughts of living somewhere else?
To be honest, I didn't think about it a lot. I think kind of just the default was that I would.
Yeah.
And have thought about the possibility of moving many times. My wife would really like kind of that adventure, and I've been the one holding us back a little bit.
Yeah.
But I've traveled a lot for my career, and I've seen, all over the United States, and there's a lot of beautiful places, but Utah's my home. I love it here. I think it's got great people, great weather. It's home to me. So yeah.
Personally, I think that's the perfect mixture, is living in Utah and then being able to travel and just get enough to get your fill for what's out there.
Absolutely.
But for me, it's like once I see what's out there, I'm like, man, I still love Utah way more than whatever's out there. Right?
Yeah. And there are a lot of great places, beautiful places. So you're right. Like, I love being able to travel and visit those places, but then come home.
Yeah. Now, remind me, where did your wife grow up?
She actually grew up in Alpine, so not far from me. We actually went to high school together. She was younger than me. She was my brother's age, and so we didn't really know each other. But we grew up knowing a lot of the same people.
So how long have you lived in Spanish Fork?
Let's see. We moved here a year after we were married, so 98.
Okay.
We've moved houses since then, but a long time now. I never really thought Spanish Fork would be our home, but here we are and we love it. So.
Yeah. So as before mentioned, you were my youth leader growing up at a critical time, and so just to tell the story quick, this is like, a really special story for me. But when my mom was diagnosed with cancer my junior year, you were one of the first people that I called because I had that trust with you. We had that relationship. We'd been in the same ward and kind of neighborhood together. You were one of the first ones I called. Honestly, I don't remember that conversation, but I just remember that I felt like I needed to call you and tell you. So I guess my question for you, now that I'm serving in the young men's and we've come 360, my question for you is, what advice do you have for people working with the youth? What advice would you give them on building a relationship and gaining the trust and being able to impact their lives?
I think kids and youth are a lot smarter than we give them credit for. Like, they're very perceptive. They can spot someone who's genuine versus someone who's just kind of going through the motions. And I think you really just, more than anything, more than, you know, how good of a teacher you are, any of those kinds of things, I think by far the most important thing is that you just genuinely love them, because they can see through whether you know, they can spot a phony really quickly.
Yeah.
You and I had a special relationship, right? But I think that was built on, I loved you and I knew you loved me, and like, that wasn't phony, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I catch myself. It's not like I'm, you know, super old, but I catch myself looking at teenagers sometimes. I'm like, those dumb teenagers, you know, they drive you nuts. But
yeah.
I think you're right. And I'm starting to learn that is they can smell that out. A lot of times they will call you out on it. Do you think there's a line between in serving in church calling? Is there a line between like being too buddy or too friend and, you know, a leader?
Well, I think if you genuinely love a kid, that doesn't mean you're going to tolerate everything they do, right? It doesn't mean you're going to be always try and be their buddy. Like, part of loving them is teaching them lessons, and calling them out when they're acting up, right? So I don't know if that answered your question, but I think if you really genuinely love someone, you're not gonna try and be their friend. You're gonna try and be their real friend. Yeah. Not their high school buddy. Right.
Yeah. So how does that translate into being a father to teenagers?
I think same thing, right? Yeah. You can love your kids, but loving is sometimes disciplining. Yeah. Right. And, you know, some parents just always want to be the good guy, right? And never discipline. They just want to be their buddy. And that doesn't, kids can sense that, right? And they'll take advantage of it, and they'll play off of that. So I think you really have to just genuinely love them and be a parent sometimes.
Yeah. I'm like, I think about when Lincoln, my toddler, is 15, and I'm so excited to like be able to, you know, go ride dirt bikes or take him and his friends boating, you know, do these fun things. But, you know, you see these other podcasts or Instagram posts, and they're like, don't be your kid's friend. And so, I always go back and forth like, well, I want to be his friend, but I get the other side of it too. So I don't know. My parents were my friends, but they definitely knew how to draw the line and put me back in my place. So I'm guessing there's a balance that, you know, I'll learn.
Well, sorry to interrupt, but one thing that I think you'll find is, you know, at least I've noticed, is your relationship develops as your kids get older. Like, I have daughters now that are 22, 19 years old, and they're becoming adults, and our relationship is changing. Like, we are better friends now than we were when they were 13, 14, right? Where they become your peers instead of, now I'm not really having to discipline. I can offer advice and I can listen and everything else, but I just think that relationship changes through the years. You've probably seen that with your dad, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Now that you bring it up, that's so accurate. So do you want to remind me, just break down your family? You have how many kids? And
4 girls.
They're all girls, right?
Yeah. 4 girls and a wife and a girl cat and a girl dog. It's our joke that I'm swimming in estrogen at our house.
And how old were you when you got married?
I was 22, so pretty young.
So what would you tell 22-year-old Caldwell? What advice would you give him if you had to go back in time and break the news and say, hey, you're going to be a girl dad. This is what you need to know. Yeah. What is that list?
It's funny because I never, ever envisioned this would be my life.
Really?
Right? No. In fact, I've told this story before to my kids and other people, but I was so sure when Karen was pregnant with our first, I was so sure that it was a boy. And I remember going to that first appointment where you find out the sex, right? Yeah. And the doctor said, looks like you're having a little girl. And my first instinct was just disappointment.
Really?
I always envisioned like being the coach,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Uh,
Did you hide
going
that disappointment from your wife?
Probably, yeah. But you know what? After about 2 weeks of having a little girl, I've never felt anything other than just I'm really proud to be a girl dad, and I don't have any desire to have boys. Like, this is my life, and I love it, and I love those girls so much, and I wouldn't trade it for anything.
That's awesome. I was so excited to have a boy first, but now that he's this 2.5-year-old snotty little mean person, I'm like, I just need a girl that will cuddle me and love me and be my little princess. You know?
I hope you get that, because there's
too.
nothing like it. And of course I've never had a boy, so I'm sure others would tell me, there's nothing like having a boy. But when that little girl, she will wrap around your finger, man.
Yeah. All my friends that have little girls are like, dude, you need a girl. Like, you need a girl in your life to teach you some lessons, which is probably true. So
did that answer your question? I can't remember what your question was.
I guess, yeah, just what advice you'd give 22-year-old Ken Caldwell on raising daughters, or what advice would you give a young dad that, has grown up around boys and is kind of scared to raise this daughter in today's world?
Yeah. I mean, it is a crazy world, isn't it?
Yeah.
I would tell them, that there's a crazy world. Social media has really changed everything.
Yeah.
There's so much pressure on youth, especially, but I think my advice would just be to treasure your time as a parent, and don't let anything overshadow that role as a parent. Like, there's nothing that I could do career-wise or hobby-wise or anything like that I think is more valuable or has been more rewarding to me than being a parent. Nothing, not even close. So I think a lot of people get distracted by different things. And I don't think there's anything more important than being a parent. So that would be my advice, is just savor that moment and those relationships, and don't let anything come between that.
So does it go by fast?
Oh, man.
Yeah.
I was your age like a blink ago, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
How old was I when, let's see, what year did you graduate high school?
2010.
2010. So, yeah, 12 years.
So how old were you when you were my leader?
What 2010? Let's see, I was born in 75. So that's what?
30.
35?
35. Jeez, that's not far off from where I'm at.
It's really not, is it?
I'm 30, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, picture me at 35 even. It's like crazy. But I guess we've talked about this. We've gone to lunch a few times and caught up. And I don't know if it surprises you as much as it surprises me, but now that I'm in my own house, I have a family, I have a wife and kid, and I'm serving the youth now. It's so weird to me, that, and I tell my young men that I have a leader that I still go to lunch with, and I'm like, I'm going to go to lunch. I'm going to take you guys to lunch, when you guys are 25 or 30, that's what I want to do. So it's pretty cool. But yeah, thinking about that just kind of blows my mind. So what was easier, the first 10 years of fatherhood or the last 10 years?
Probably the last 10 years. I think being a young parent is really hard. On a lot of different levels. Like, you're just getting used to having kids and the stresses of having young kids and babysitters and potty training and a stressed out wife, right? Finances are, at least for us, were a struggle when we were young. On the other hand, I feel like I've really been blessed. I haven't had like rebellious kids. That would change a lot, right?
Right.
Having really rebellious teenagers or young adults so I can see for others that would be a huge struggle. Knock on wood, that hasn't been a struggle for us.
Yeah.
So it's probably different for everyone. For me, I think the last 10 years have been a little calmer, a little easier than the beginning.
So Can you just kind of give me, I guess, your resume or where you've served in the church? I know you've served a lot with the youth. What else have you done in the past years?
So yes, I've had a lot of different callings through the years. Young men's there's no better place than serving with the youth.
Agreed.
That's where it's at, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I'm serving on the High Council right now.
Okay.
Before then, I served as a bishop and in a bishopric and some other callings like that. But
Okay.
yeah, there's nothing like the youth. That's where it's at.
Yeah. So, if you're willing to talk about it, I want to pick your brain a little bit about the calling of a bishop, because
Okay.
I've been able to be pretty close with a few different bishops that we've had before being married and after, during being married. And I can just, there's a weight on your shoulders from what I've observed as a bishop. How did you handle that and balance your home life with your calling, your job, your kids, and everything else?
Not very well. No.
I don't believe that.
I don't know. There's definitely a weight. I served for a little over 5 years, and I think during that 5 years, I don't know that I slept on the couch almost every night, because there was a TV there, and I could, if I didn't have TV, my mind wouldn't stop racing, and so I just got in a bad habit of sleeping on the couch.
Were you bringing the calling home, and it was hard to
just
separate?
just thinking about different things, both like administrative stuff and also people, right? A lot of concerns about people and how you can help and their struggles that just kind of weigh on you. And
who teaches you to serve as a bishop?
Nobody.
Yeah.
Well, I shouldn't say that. You learn by watching other people.
Yeah.
Right? Like you said, you've been around some various bishops. You've picked up a few things from them that, like, you've thought to yourself, I like how he handles stuff like that. If I was a bishop, that's how I would do it. Or if I'm a bishop, that's not how I would do it. Right? Things like that.
Yeah. So there are certain things. Obviously, there's things that you have to handle in a certain way, but you can also kind of bring your personality and style into the calling.
Not only can you, I think you need to.
Yeah.
Like I don't think it works if you're just trying to fit a mold, right? I think you have to be yourself. I think that's why you're called, is for who you are. And so I think in order to be most effective, you have to be who you are.
That's interesting you say that, because that's my same concept with missionaries. Mm-hmm. Every time I talk to a missionary or soon to be missionary that's been called, I tell them they've been called to that place because of their personality. There's people waiting on who they are, their talents, their past experiences. So that's very interesting, and probably can be applied to pretty much any calling in the church.
I actually learned that lesson as a missionary.
Yeah.
When, I went through a time when I was trying to be someone that I wasn't.
Yeah.
And it wasn't working.
Was it early on?
Yeah, it was 6 months in.
Yeah.
Right? Where I was really trying to be like a better missionary.
Yeah.
And my idea of being a better missionary was like fitting the mold of what a missionary should be, the picture perfect missionary, or mimicking other people I thought were great missionaries.
Yeah.
And it was actually a member of our ward who lived in our same apartment complex who kind of called me out on it and said, "You're not being you. You're trying to be someone you're not, and
Wow.
and in doing that, you're not being a very good missionary." He didn't say it like that.
That's hard to hear as a 19-year-old kid.
It's what I needed to hear.
Yeah.
And I think I really learned a valuable lesson that kind of segued into other areas of my life when I got home.
That's cool. I like that a lot. Can you take me through receiving the calling as a bishop, and how you and your wife handled it? Like, when you got that calling, did you go home and talk, and what was that conversation like?
So I was called as a bishop, and then there was like a 2 or 3 week waiting period before it was, sustained in things. And so that process was hard. it would have been easier if they'd called me Saturday night and then done it the next day. But I had 3 weeks to kind of sit on it and think about it and stress about it.
Yeah.
And I remember that Sunday when I was sustained, I remember sitting on the stand and thinking, what have you done? Like, why did you put yourself in this position? It would have been so much easier to just kind of coast along and not put yourself in a position where this would happen. Yeah. And so, I don't know. It's hard in a lot of ways. But over time, I don't know, just kind of got used to it, I guess. It was a challenge for my wife, I think in some ways more so than me. Yeah. I was in a lot of positions where, you know, you're in those uplifting meetings. I'm the one meeting with members who I can see progressing and changing and things. And my wife's just home with the kids, like, doing housework and trying to hold down the fort. And she doesn't get to see all those miraculous things that I get to, right? She's just doing the dirty work, right? Yeah. So I think women are the wives of bishops are really, they're heroes, man.
They're the unrecognized hero of the calling.
They really are. And they take on a lot of the same anxieties and stresses of a bishop and don't get anywhere near like the support, right?
So how many hours per week were you putting towards this calling?
Oh, that's hard to say. Like in the office kind of thing, or like, I couldn't tell you. Maybe, I mean, Sundays was pretty much all day, right? Yeah. And then maybe a couple other nights a week where you're actually in meetings and things. But it's the stuff that you can't count. It's the emails during the day, the texts during the day, the sleepless nights. Like, I don't even know how to count that, but it's significant.
Yeah, I feel like especially with Sunday, you really need to plan ahead. Like, if I was called as bishop, I'd probably be ordering Domino's delivered to the church because I forgot to eat, you know. But
we had in our ward, we had like the bishop's candy jar, right? Yeah. For the primary kids. Yeah. And we always laughed at the end of a Sunday afternoon. That thing was just filled with with wrappers, right?
Empty wrappers.
That the bishopric all like we'd have like 20 of those things, right?
Yeah, yeah. So, what was a lesson that you learned serving as a bishop that you may not have learned otherwise?
Well, I'll tell you the most eye-opening thing to me. I was shocked at the mental health concerns in our area, in a ward, in a neighborhood. Like, I knew that, you know, there was a lot of people struggling with depression, anxiety, things of that nature, but I had no idea it was as rampant as it is. Like, seems like almost every home is affected by it, in, you know, through one member of the home or multiple members of the home, or through someone they really care for, right? Like, it's just it's an epidemic, really.
Yeah. And would you say that has come about in the younger age group?
I think it's more prevalent probably in the younger age group, but there's a lot of adults struggling with it too that I don't think people realize, like, hidden, right? A lot of adults that are struggling through life and not talking about it, but really struggling with it.
Yeah, that's something I've observed as well, and it kind of brings up the question in my mind, like, how can these parents be better prepared to help their kids when they haven't been able to help themselves first? Yeah. Right. Mm-hmm. So I'm sure, I know there's a lot of resources out there, and, you know, part of this podcast is to get men specifically to open up and be able to talk, or at least feel comfortable talking with someone, you know, about their mental health. And I think that's the first step to getting help. But do you feel like it's something that is growing? I guess the question would be, do you feel like social media and the internet is one of the main attributors to that?
I think it's definitely a contributor. How much, I have no idea, right? And I don't know what other contributing factors there are. I've asked that question to a lot of different people, just getting their opinion, and I've thought about it a lot. Like, why does it just seem to be exploding like it is, right? And I don't know all of the reasons, but I definitely think that's a contributing factor. Yeah.
Yeah. So as a bishop, I'm sure I want to kind of ask you some questions about maybe provide some help to people that are not part of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Just as a general answer, what would be the first steps to improving your spirituality or your relationship with God?
I think that's a good question. You know, there's a lot of people I love who are not members of the church, or are members of the church that are really struggling with their beliefs, like kind of having their faith crisis, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
And I think my advice to them would be, you know, you got to start with the basics. Like, is there a God? And if there is, what does that mean for me?
Yeah.
And how can I find out if there is or isn't, right? And just kind of building from scratch, but then not settling, because what I see, like, growing a lot in the country as, like, religion seems to be dying. Doesn't seem to be. Statistically, it is, right?
Right. Yeah.
There's a lot of people who claim to be agnostic or believe in a higher power, but don't pursue anything beyond that. And they kind of get comfortable in just saying, yeah, I believe in God, but then they don't do anything about it, right?
Yeah.
Like, okay, if there's a God, then what does that mean for you? And how do you grow as a person? How do you get closer to him? How do you find out what he wants for you? Like, it takes work and effort and sacrifice, and you have to be willing to put in that work if you want your faith to grow.
I think that is so true, and something I've noticed, just as it seems like in the last 5 years, is my career grows, our family grows, you know, our financial situation hopefully improves year upon year. It seems like, especially since I've become a father, my spirituality gets put on the back burner because I'm helping my wife, I'm supporting her in her career, I'm helping my kid. I'm
pulled in a lot of directions, right?
Yeah. So it's like if I were to break it down into a day, you know, it's 10:30 at night and I haven't done anything to feed my spirit, and I go to bed. What have you found helps you out to maybe remind you to take those steps and to take action to grow spiritually?
I was riding along with a coworker, it's been probably a year ago, and we started talking about religion. And he knows I'm from Utah. He knows I'm LDS, and so he just asked me. He said, "So do you go to church every week?" And I said, "Yeah, pretty much. You know, unless I'm sick or something unusual, we're pretty much there." And he goes, "Why?" Like, and you know, not an unusual question. Like, why do you feel the need to go to church? And he said, "I feel like I can worship God without going to church," which is true to some extent. But what I found is that being involved in the church, in my case LDS, but for other people maybe it's another church, going to church gives you a reason. I don't want to say an excuse, but it gives you a focus, and it almost forces you to, like, read your scriptures and prepare a lesson and study. And at least it has for me. And I can say that, you know, the different church callings I've had throughout my life has really blessed me in, if I didn't have those, maybe I'd be a lot lazier, right? Maybe I wouldn't have the same focus. I just think, like, attending church, being involved in church gives me the focus and that kick in the seat that I often need, right?
Yeah, and I think with my age group, and maybe younger, I feel like a lot of people are losing purpose. You know, they have a 9-to-5 job. You know, they maybe go out with friends and hang out on the weekends. But beyond that, they don't have a larger purpose. So to have a purpose, the church provides a purpose for every member, right? And it makes me sad to think that people don't have a purpose, a reason to wake up in the morning and have that drive to be better and do better.
Yeah.
So to have a purpose, I think, is very important throughout your whole life.
I was talking with a friend a week or so ago. We have a work event coming up in Vegas, so we were just talking about Las Vegas, and he said, the saddest thing you'll ever see in your whole life is walking through a casino and seeing a 90-year-old woman sitting at a slot machine with her oxygen tank, just dumping, not even putting quarters in now, just pushing a button.
Yeah.
All day for a week, right? Like zero purpose, zero reason to live, just mind-numbing, something just to numb the mind, right? And get through life. And then I think of other people I know who are 90 years old who have that purpose, right? Who are out serving missions and spending time with grandkids and you have to have a purpose.
So I feel like with fatherhood, whether you like it or not, you have a purpose, right? If you approach it properly, the correct way. My wife and I have had these conversations, and even when she was pregnant, we would talk about how serious I take fatherhood. I'm a pretty happy-go-lucky dude. I like to joke around, but at the end of the day, I really do take fatherhood very seriously.
Yeah.
But there are people that are a little bit older and have not been married, and maybe have a hard time finding that purpose outside of their job. Are there other ways to serve in our community or to find a purpose beyond your 9-to-5 and beyond your friends and hanging out on the weekends? Are there any other good ways that you've seen for young single adults to find a purpose?
For young single adults in specifically?
Yeah.
I think serving people, and I don't mean that like, soup kitchens. That could be, but I think being there for someone is like a timeless act of service, right? And that's where like satisfaction in life comes from, is by relationships, more so than things, more so than hobbies, or like there's not a hobby out there that you won't burn out from if it's not attached to people, right? So I think you have to have meaningful relationships and unselfish relationships and like serve people.
That's awesome advice. And I think when you're serving, it's really hard to think about yourself. It's really hard to have pity and have the woe is me attitude, right?
Yeah.
So,
but the beauty comes, I think, when that service leads to friendship, that's genuine friendship. Like, I'm thinking of some friends I have who I've been there for them in their dark hours, but they're also there for me in my darkest hour, right? And like, it's not, we don't feel like I'm going to go perform service for someone. We want to be there for them because that's my friend, right?
Yeah.
And it's not a feeling of service as much as it is a feeling of love and friendship.
Yeah. So I wanna turn the tables a little and go a different direction. Kind of go back to finding balance in your life. And as I observe you have adult kids now. Do you have 2 at home?
Well, 2.5.
One's an adult.
My 19-year-old kind of comes and goes.
I guess my point is you don't need to find a babysitter anymore.
Right. No.
So you have this time. I know that you're a big fan of pickleball. You have this time to go play pickleball, right?
Uh-huh.
How has that helped you with your mental health and your balance in your life?
Oh, it's been huge. And that might sound stupid, right, to some people, but getting fresh air and exercise and having an outlet has has just been amazing. And whether that's road biking or pickleball or boxing or music, it could be a lot of different things. But I went the whole time I served as bishop. I really didn't have an outlet like that.
Yeah.
So I took up pickleball 2 weeks after I was released, and I was amazed at how good I felt within a couple weeks.
Wow. I feel like it's so important for in a marriage for the husband and the wife to have those outlets, right? And something I think my wife and I do really well is we have interests together, but we also have our separate interests.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm make sure to allow her time to go pursue those interests, and she does the same for me.
Mm-hmm.
That's why you'll find me at 10:25 p.m. at night in the Mapleton pickleball courts, right?
Yeah.
She allows me to do that, but it allows us to have balance in our relationship as well as my personal life.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I want to get your thoughts on pursuing hard things or consistently proving to yourself that you can do hard things. For example, running a marathon or, reaching a goal in the gym or whatever it is. Are there any hard things that you've pursued in your life?
You might be talking to the wrong guy, because in a lot of ways, I'm kind of a minimalist by nature. And I'm not proud to say this, but usually if there's the shortcut, I usually take it, right?
That might be your talent, though.
Maybe so. Maybe so, but I've never been the guy who's seeking out climbing Mount Everest, right? The big, huge obstacles. That's generally not me. I'm usually the guy that is most content taking the easier path. And again, I'm not proud to say that, but that's
maybe it's not the easier path. Maybe you're just satisfied with your life. And which is great, to be able to get to that point where you're satisfied and you can look back at your life and be happy.
Yeah.
That's a great point. That's a great place to be in your life.
Yeah.
I want to pick your brain about traveling. You've traveled a lot with work, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Domestically, I haven't done much international at all, but I've been pretty much all around the country.
Are you flying most of the time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So top 3 tips for airports or flying.
Ooh. Top 3 tips for flying in general or just travel?
Flying, navigating airports and plane travel.
Boy, that's hard. If you can, stick with an airline, pick an airline and stick with it and get points, right? Play that game. It's a game, and it can be an exhausting game, but take advantage of all the free travel you can get. My family we go on vacations every year, right? That really don't cost us much because I'm getting credit for flights and hotels and car rentals and all those things, and those are free vacations. So that would be probably my number one tip. If it's if you're traveling for business, take advantage of the perks.
Okay, I like it. Best family vacation that you've been on?
Oh, when the kids were younger, my 4 daughters, Disney was always their thing. So we'd go to Disney World. I don't know, we went 8 or 9 times in January. Yeah. When it's cold here, right? When you're dying to leave Salt Lake and get out of the snow and go get some 80-degree weather in Orlando. We had some awesome trips when the kids were young. Exhausting trips as an adult, but super fun. Made so many great memories.
That's awesome. I was fairly against Disney, going so often.
Yeah.
But I found out that I can survive longer as long as I find food to eat, food to try, right?
Yeah.
So that's the dad hack is, if I'm at Disneyland, I'm going to have a turkey leg in my hand and a churro in the other hand, and I'm happy, and I can people watch, I can go on the rides, and then it's also awesome to watch your kids have fun.
And that's really I don't love Disney, but I love my kids.
Yeah.
And watching them have a great time, there's nothing more rewarding, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah. And my other advice for Disney, don't if you're gonna do it right. don't go there on Christmas Day or the 4th of July. Like, of course that's going to be miserable, right?
Yeah. Have you done that?
No.
Okay.
No, never. Go there, find the off days.
Yep.
Don't try and cram everything into one day. Go for several days and kind of take it easy, take your time and make it enjoyable, not like this exhausting
Yeah.
headache, right?
Yeah. So in all your travels, best food that you've had?
Ooh. New Orleans.
Really?
Probably New Orleans.
I want to go on a food tour there so bad.
I love Cajun food.
Yeah.
And they've got amazing. They've got a mix of like Cajun and I think they got a little of everything.
Yeah.
So New Orleans and maybe a close second would be Texas, like Texas barbecue. Texas Tex-Mex.
Yeah.
That's good stuff.
Okay. Top 2 places in Utah County to eat.
Ooh.
They could be your go-tos, or they could be like date night, sit-down restaurants.
Go-tos. Okay, you're gonna laugh at me, right?
Okay.
Because I know this isn't like fine dining by any means.
No problem.
Mi Ranchito in Orem.
Okay. I've been there, and
I
it's
probably
really good.
I probably eat there like, well, I'm not gonna say it's embarrassing. Way too often.
You have like a gold card membership by now.
I'm a diamond member.
Yeah.
There. Yeah.
Okay, number 2.
I don't know that I have a number 2. We don't have like great food here.
No,
like,
that's why I'm asking.
I could tell you, but it would be embarrassing because they're all like chain restaurants, right? Like Texas Roadhouse. I don't know.
Yeah. Get a very average steak.
Yeah,
Texas
exactly.
Roadhouse.
Right. A chain restaurant. Seems like we're the capital of chain restaurants here. But
Yeah. Are you a reader?
not really. No. I read a lot of like current events and political news and religious stuff, but I'm not one to sit down and read a novel.
Okay.
I do read a lot during the day, but it's all like news and things like that.
Okay. One last question to wrap up this awesome episode. What is the one lesson that you want your daughters to have when you're no longer here?
Oh, that's been on my mind a lot the last year, and I don't know why, but like if I could wish anything on my kids, obviously I'm LDS, and I have some strong beliefs.
Yeah.
And I want my kids to never lose that. Like I want them to gain their own testimony of what is truth, and I want them to stick with it and never let that go. And it's almost like something you want to like infuse in your kids, but you can't.
Yeah.
Right? Like, so I just want them to develop that on their own and have their own convictions, and then have the courage and the strength and the fortitude to never ever give up on those beliefs.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. That's such an awesome answer. And thanks for coming on the podcast. This has been an awesome conversation.
That was it seemed like 5 minutes.
Yeah. I told you it wouldn't be too stressful. So thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
And
That was
that's
an
all.
interesting experience. Thanks.